Hallows End. Upon hearing the holiday's name, most people tend to think of one of two things. A, either a Halloween ripoff, or B, an annoying meta-achievement time sink event. But did you know the holiday actually has lore behind it just beyond being a WoW version of Halloween? Did you know it existed canonically before the Forsaken were freed from the Lich King's control? And did you know the Headless Horseman actually has lore and is more than just a goofy rhyming trope of a character? Hello everybody, my name is Necroxis, and in honor of both Halloween and the ending of Hallows End in WoW, I wanted to cover the history of the holiday in full detail. So, let's get started. The lore of Hallows End tends to be split into two specific topics, one of the event itself, and one of the enigmatic Headless Horseman and his relationship to it. To begin, Hallows End existed and was celebrated far before the Forsaken were ever freed from the Lich King's control. True, it existed far before the Scourge itself was even created. The holiday was celebrated in Lordaeron and Gilneas as part of a group of other smaller festivals. The largest festival in this group, however, by far was Hallows End. These festivals, or more specifically rituals, have existed for humanity from time immemorial, and represented, among many other things, change. Change from fall to winter, change from living to dead, and later on, the freedom and change that came from being Scourge to Forsaken. The time around Hallows End was believed to be one where the barrier between the worlds of the living and the dead were thin, and it was a time where those who had passed on could be sensed by those still alive. On the night of the ceremony, at sunset, tradition dictated that a giant straw effigy would be erected outside of the capital city of Lordaeron. It would be lit on fire, typically by a member of royalty or another important member of society, and anyone who wished could approach it and toss a branch onto the inferno. This represented a metaphorical burning away of anything the person didn't want to carry with them into the time of deep reflection that was winter. Interestingly enough, the holiday did manage to survive the destruction of Lordaeron at the onset of the Third War. However, the importance has shifted from changing of the season to representing Sylvanas Windrunner and her Forsaken breaking free from the Lich King's mental control and regaining their free will. As such, every year around Hallows End, Sylvanas will give a short speech about the Forsaken's freedom and place in the world before burning the effigy. As for the Alliance, before the Worgen rejoined them, not many were sure why they continued to practice the rituals of Hallows End except out of a sense of tradition, and while they did not burn their own Wickermen at first, inevitably the Horde and the Alliance conflict would be drawn into the holiday, with attacks from each faction on Stormwind and the Undercity. However, most of these would fall under mere pranks rather than attacks, with stink bombs being the worst weapon used by each side. But when Gilneas rejoined the Alliance following the Cataclysm, they reintroduced the idea of legitimately celebrating Hallows End to them. A large Wickerman is now constructed outside of Stormwind, with Genn Greymane giving a speech before lighting it on fire. Ironically, due to the Worgen and Forsaken's conflict, much of Genn's speech rings familiar with Sylvanas's. He speaks of change for Gilneas, and how they, more than most, are familiar with it, what with their homeland being destroyed and large numbers of them basically turning into dogmen. However, while Sylvanas tells the Forsaken that the burning of the Wickermen represents a declaration of strength and their place in the world to their enemies, Genn states that the burning of the Wickermen represents a mockery of the fearsome, to gaze boldly into the grim unknown and laugh, and most importantly, to celebrate new friends and the future that may be forged with them. So now we have an understanding about the festival as a whole, but what about this mysterious Headless Horseman figure? Was he always hostile toward the idea of Hallows End and the world as a whole? The answer is a resounding no! The Headless Horseman was once a man actually known as Thomas Thompson. Sir Thomas's family owned a farm in the Tirisfal Glades, and eventually he grew up to join the Knights of the Silver Hand. And during his time as a paladin, he was there to watch Arthas propose to purge Stratholme, and he actually agreed with Jaina and Uther's rejection of the idea. Sir Thomas witnessed a scourging of Lordaeron. He was present when Baron Rivendare, a rich landowner in Stratholme, and a secret ally to Kel'Thuzad and the Cult of the Damned, intentionally sent a large supply of plagued grain to a village he was defending, confirming his treason. He was present for Arthas' return from Northrend, where the prince slew his father in the throne room and began the destruction of their home. He also learned 5 days later that Arthas had murdered his mentor, Uther the Lightbringer, and most of the Knights of the Silver Hand. This man seen a lot of shit. While Sir Thomas wanted to defend his homeland, the safety of his family was of utmost importance. As such, he ordered his wife and children to flee to Kalimdor on the last ship leaving, following the same route that Jaina took. Over the next 4 years, Sir Thomas fought alongside what remained of the Knights of the Silver Hand to destroy the Scourge, alongside the Ashbringer himself, Alexandros Mograine. Thomas himself, though, was assigned under Sidon Datharan, who he looked up to, although he nor anyone else realized that Datharan at that time already was merely a shell for the Dreadlord Balnazar. Ultimately, however, the Knights of the Silver Hand would be permanently broken when Alexandros Mograine was killed by his own son in using the Ashbringer to do it. The surviving members split into 2 groups, one reasonable and one fanatical. These would be the Argent Dawn and the Scarlet Crusade, respectively. Sir Thomas, still looking up to Sidon Datharan and following him, followed him and joined the Scarlet Crusade, and soon the organization became more and more fanatical at Balnazar's intention. One day, Sidon Datharan let Sir Thomas and the others down to a town of refugees who told them they were doing a simple plague check. Datharan managed to convince Sir Thomas that the townsfolk were infected and needed to be purged. However, unlike with Stratholme, this time Sir Thomas participated, and it was during this slaughter that Sir Thomas accidentally killed his entire family. After the fact, he came to the conclusion that the last ship fleeing Kalimdor that he had placed his family on must have been damaged by the oncoming storm, and with Lordaeron burning to the ground, nobody could repair the ship, and his family was forced to stay behind. The realization that he murdered his entire family broke Sir Thomas utterly. He was taken back to the Scarlet Monastery and he went mad, believing the entire world to be infected, and he alone could be the one to save it. He would go on a murderous spree on Hallows End until he was stopped and eventually beheaded. Sidon Datharan gave the fallen Crusader an honorable burial in the graveyard of the Scarlet Monastery. However, once he was entombed, the hidden Dreadlord used his own blood to turn Sir Thomas into a Death Knight with his own free will and madness. Thus, the Headless Horseman was born. The Horseman would rise every Hallows End, attacking Horde and Alliance alike, now under the belief that he was alive while they were all dead. In the end, however, he would be confronted in the same graveyard by adventurers where he was buried and defeated once and for all. With the Horseman dead, the true spirit of Sir Thomas Thompson would be freed, thanking the adventurers for returning him to the light, and hoping that in the light is where he would remain. However, only time will tell if his spirit will remain in that light, or if the Horseman will rise again next Hallows End. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, the lore of Hallows End and the Headless Horseman. A bit more serious than you were expecting, wasn't it? Be honest. Thanks for watching as always. If you have any comments, questions, or criticisms, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you found this video informative or entertaining, feel free to help me out by liking, commenting, or subscribing if you haven't yet. But as always, if you'd really like to help me out, the best way you can do so is by sharing this video and my channel with anyone you think would find it interesting. As always, I am always looking to introduce more people into the rich and illustrious lore of the universe of Warcraft, to steal a line from Boether's lore old intro. So if you're able to send people my way, I'd be eternally grateful. Make sure to stay tuned to this channel for more lore content of this sort coming up, especially with the Warlords of Draenor release on the horizon. We're down to 2 weeks exactly until the release of the new expansion when I recorded this video, so stay tuned for more general lore content as well as Warlords patch content, because there is always more lore to explore, especially with an imminent expansion launch on the way, and I am of the opinion that it is always more fun to do it together. So I'll catch you next time, guys. Thanks for watching, and farewell, and happy Halloween!